Hello and welcome to Curious Talk. I am Jeremy Hochhalter and I'm here with Catie Griffin, who plays Pracha on the Curiosity Cache, which airs Fridays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Did I get that all right?
Yeah.
Yay! Yeah. How are you today, Catie?
I'm doing pretty well. How are
Awesome. I think I'm doing well. I haven't been told otherwise, so hooray. So, we're here to talk about the game somewhat, but mostly you and what you as a player are all about, or as a person as well. So I guess, do you want to start with games or do you want to start with real life?
Either. I'll let you choose.
Well, the list has real life first, so I guess we might as well.
Okay.
I did have to do chores first today, so that makes sense. So in real life, I already know the answer to this, but you tell everyone what you're doing.
In real life, I'm a writer, kind of in my spare time. So I work on a lot of tabletop RPGs. Before that, I worked in LARP quite a bit. And then my actual job is in the wedding industry. So I work with brides and grooms and couples in general and make sure that they get down the aisle. That's the important part.
That is the important part. It's funny because I also, well, up until about last year, I also was in the wedding industry. So
really?
What a coincidence.
In what capacity?
I was a wedding photographer. I say was just because I didn't shoot anything last year. I took a break. I'm not really sure what I'll do with it, but it's a thing. So what brought you into the wedding industry?
Honestly, I was running events. I'm about to boot my dog out of here because I'm not paying attention to him, so he's complaining. So I actually, hello. I actually got into it by running events, and I realized I really enjoyed the hands-on of being there and experiencing that adrenaline rush as people enjoyed themselves. And I realized that I could transfer this into something that was a bit more physical, so weddings. So I interviewed for a position and I started learning the wedding industry, and honestly, it's gone great so far. I absolutely love my job, and it's a lot of hands-on stuff. It's a lot of networking with different people. It's a lot of making sure that everything goes smoothly and realizing that no matter what, something is going to happen that isn't expected, and kind of altering what you're doing based on that.
It's so true.
Something's going to go wrong.
Right. Kind of like technology. And so far, all of our streaming sessions so far. Yay.
Yep.
So let's talk about generally D&D first and RPGs, and then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty on the stream itself. So when did you start playing RPGs in general, and if D&D was your first one, or if you've come into D&D since then?
So I am a bit of an oddity in that I didn't really start tabletopping until the past couple of years. Give me just one moment. My friend, Mr. Watson.
Well, hello.
Wants all of my attention.
I totally understand.
Give me one moment.
While Mr. Watson is being escorted elsewhere, make sure you tune in. It's actually tomorrow, Friday at 4:30 on our Twitch stream to catch the third episode of Curiosity Cache. And she's back, so I'll stop talking about it. We'll come back to it later. Awesome.
All right, where were we?
So you just came into D&D a couple years ago.
Yes, I only came into D&D a couple years ago. I started with, which team did I really start with? Michael was running basically a supplement world that uses the 5e system. That is Magic the Gathering.
Oh yeah, nice.
For the world, so we did a campaign in Ravnica, which was awesome, and he is now starting a new one that is all about magic pirates, effectively. And I kind of got into it that way. I really enjoyed it. And honestly, since then, I've kind of expanded by beginning to write for it. I got into writing for tabletop through Dystopia Rising and actually the story path system with Dystopia Rising Evolution, which is new. And then the previous Dystopia Rising tabletops that weren't with Onyx Path, but were with Eschaton Media. And that was a completely different system. And then I kind of hopped on board with Scarred Lands that I'm currently working on a project titled To Be Announced. But it's been really awesome so far. There's a great team of writers working on it, and
Nice.
I'm honestly really excited to use it for my own campaigns.
Nice.
So
Is there an estimated time of arrival for that project?
I would have to ask. I know when my stuff is due.
Right.
But I don't know when, art and everything else and editing and when the project is officially scheduled to
Right.
release and launch. Yeah.
Well, we'll keep our eye out for it, and once
Yeah.
it does go live, we'll share it on the stream.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah.
So you've played Ravnica.
Yeah.
You're playing Scarred Lands. Have you played any other settings?
Dystopia Rising. What else? Typical D&D as well. We did a typical D&D setting that was basically everyone's a wizard. So everyone started out as a wizard for that campaign, and you had to multi-class no matter what.
Huh.
So
was that just to survive because you had no hit points?
Yeah.
Nice.
It was basically your Wizard Harry magic school, except it was very much you have to. The premise is wizards are notoriously bad at surviving. So this was a wizard school based on we're going to teach you to survive no matter what.
Huh.
So each wizard that entered the school was expected to learn something else that would help with their survival, aka multi-classing.
That's fun.
And it was a really fun game. We wound up, venturing into the wilds after going to wizard school and doing more hands-on training, which involved getting smeared across some pavement, but it was a lot of fun.
Nice. So is that a homebrew or is that an actual published?
That was a homebrew.
Because that sounds amazing. I would totally play that.
Yeah.
So whoever ran that should write that and publish it.
Yeah.
So going into our game a little bit, is this the first, and we haven't really talked about it with the public in general, maybe we should have, I don't know. Is this the first game that you've played where you started at level 0, like without a class, and kind of an idea where you're going to go with your character, but I mean, it's kind of open for changes because you are level 0, and if you role-playing into something else decided to do that, you could.
Mm-hmm. This is absolutely the first campaign I've ever started at level 0. Usually I start at 1,
Yeah.
or a few of the other ones we started at 5 or 6, depending on what the arc was.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting that we're starting at level 0, and I think it kind of leaves it more open for a little bit of comedy, a little bit of seriousness, but also as we as characters try to figure out what are we doing, how can we accomplish these things in ways that don't require a class.
Yeah.
And what other people can we pull on, what other connections can we pull on that allow us to actually accomplish our goals, whether that happens to be moving a giant statue. Spoilers, we accomplished that goal because somebody stole it.
It was funny because during the game, you guys, yay, we did it. And I was like, yay. But did you actually do it? What does it matter?
It doesn't matter. It's fine.
It's done. That's right. That's right. I didn't want to steal any thunder, so we'll see how that goes the next game. So have you DM'd before, or do you mostly play?
I actually mostly DM.
Oh, gotcha. Nice.
Yeah, so I mostly DM for Scarred Lands. I also did sort of a homebrew DMing thing for the World of Utopia Descending, and I did that online for a bit. But yeah, it's my experience has mostly been DMing. I love playing. I love the collaboration between players, but largely and really I enjoy both. I can't say I prefer one over the other,
Yeah.
but I usually DM.
Nice. Do you usually play online or in person, or is it kind of a mix?
It's a mix.
Nice.
I'm currently running a campaign that I'm doing every other Monday that takes place in Scarred Lands. And that's in person, but previously I mostly DM'd online.
Gotcha. Cool. Is this your first stream?
It is.
Yay.
You might have been able to tell with my level of technology here.
Everyone has had technological issues with this stream so far, so can't complain. Let's see. What is one of your most memorable moments as either a DM or a player, or one of either?
Oh, great question. DM or player? As a DM, probably my players taking on these giant insectoid creatures in the Hornsaw Forest, so it's Scarred Lands.
Yeah.
And they were fighting them, and they were being, forgive my language, beaten to shit. And they were struggling, and the barbarian at the time was still raging. So he rolled a perception check and heard another threat that was literally like way, way away. Not going to hear them, not going to interact with them, but he succeeded really well. I was like, oh, it's in that direction, however far away. He's like, cool, I'm going to rush over there.
Was the other battle still going on, or had they just finished?
No, they had just finished and were starting to potentially heal. And then as soon as he went, I was like, all right, everybody roll for initiative.
Right? Barbarians, man. Barbarians.
So that was possibly one of my funniest moments. They all survived. They
Yay.
had a great time, but they also described their barbarian dwarf as a rabbit squirrel that was running through the tree.
That's fair. Yeah. That actually is probably pretty on the nose for most barbarians. Yeah. Anything from a player standpoint?
Player standpoint, I did play a game, Lex Occultum game, which was absolutely amazing.
Nice.
And during that campaign, there was a it was very much like a dark politics game.
Okay.
But there is absolutely a moment during the game, and I decided to play the scummy fighter, the best way to describe her. She was kind of a lower class individual, and during that particular campaign, there was a moment where the characters had to go into this really lavish upper class party, and at this point I get stopped at the door, and they're like, no, you can't go through. I'm like, okay, and everyone else is like, no, you should go. I was like, no, I'm gonna stay here and wait outside, talk to some individual outside. And I liked that moment because it drove home the class system in this particular game. And I really like little moments that drive home the genre of the game world. And that particular defined moment, well, doesn't seem that cool when you tell about it. It really stuck out to me because it, again, drives home the genre.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it.
So speaking of that, and so like, Scarred Lands is fantasy, and it's not quite grimdark fantasy where like everything sucks, but it is kind of a Travis Legg, who's the line developer for Onyx Path for their Scarred Lands stuff. He always describes it as like grim bright, where it's everything's messed up. Like the essential apocalypse happened it was like 150 years ago. The survivors are just trying to like rebuild at this point and survive and be normal again. And so your story earlier about the Hornsaw Forest, like them getting messed up isn't a weird thing in Scarred Lands. Like, it's
No.
pretty
Yeah.
common, and because of that, Scarred Lands characters and player races tend to be a little beefier than like typical like Forgotten Realms and stuff like that. So in Curiosity Cache, you're playing an orc, which doesn't tend to be what players play in like Forgotten Realms. They're playing half orcs.
Yeah.
How do you feel about orcs versus half orcs and the difference between them rule wise?
I love them. I think orcs are super cool. I like their history, and I like the take on orcs in Scarlands, and that they're intelligent. People assume that they aren't, but
Yeah.
they actually are. They have their own unique culture. However, at the same time, they weren't quite on the right side. So they have to kind of fight against that
Yeah.
when dealing with humans or elves as an example. But I like how they are their own distinct race rather than, well, you're redeemed because you're part human, which a lot
Right.
of half orcs are.
Yeah.
Orcs are their own distinct race, and I really like that they have their own society, their own culture, their own way of interacting with the world, and they aren't these dumb brutes like a lot of orcs in other settings.
Yeah.
Are.
Yeah, and like in Forgotten Realms, you look at the monster manual for orc, and they're just,
Mhm.
I off the top of my head I can't think of what they are, but it has their set alignment, and
Yeah.
Scarlands just removes that.
Yeah.
You can be a lawful good orc that is a worshiper of Corian and is a paladin and all of this, and it's not. I don't want to say it's not weird, but it's not as weird, and
Yeah.
and you don't have to reach as far to get there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So what are you looking forward to in the Curiosity Cache campaign? Like, we've talked a little bit about where everything's going, so we don't want to spoil much for the viewers, but what are you as a player excited about?
I'm really excited about diving into the mystery of Freed's mark on his arm.
Yeah.
Like that seems really cool. Like, I know I kind of downplayed it, but I am excited about that and finding out more about that.
Nice.
And honestly, I'm really excited about officially going on our first adventure.
Nice.
Because I think that things are going to get really real quickly because this is Scarlands. And I think we'll get out of our very comfortable, semi-comfortable situation, and kind of get thrown into this amazing adventure, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's what I'm excited about.
Well, no real spoilers, but everyone will at least get a little bit more about Freed's mark pretty quickly in episode 3, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I don't want to give spoilers away. I've been thinking about this all week. I'm so Jones for episode 3. So Pracha is an orc. She came to Shelzar fairly young. How young is young? Like, was she a child or a teenager?
I would say child.
Okay.
Like, she was young. I would say child. Her parents really wanted to kind of get into shipping and trading, and really thought that they were gonna make it in the city of Shelzar, and they kind of did. They weren't great, but they kind of did. And they're like, oh, our daughter is second generation. She'll be better. She's like, no, I don't want to do this. I mean, you're telling me to do this, so I'm going to do this. I will not for me. And that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah. So Pracha is working for Belky, who is the gnomish owner of the Curiosity Cache. And Belky's gone missing. I think Pracha is starting to realize this. Like, he said, hey, I'll be back. And that time period is come and gone. And so I think she's starting to realize it. But I don't think the other characters have quite figured it out yet.
Yeah.
And so from this last episode, a little recap is that a member of House Asurus, which is like one of the largest uh, trade and trade companies in the entirety of Gelsbad, the continent. Um, Essentially reintroduced himself to Pracha, who didn't really remember him, but they did a little bit of growing up together because he's related to somebody in House Asurus. He's now coming into his own and trying to like go out and be his own member of the house. And by doing that, I think Pracha realized that he's trying to get her to sign up to become like a franchise of House of Surus, which she knows Belky is very against, and so we'll have to see how that works out. So she's been in Shelzar, and pretty much the rest of the group are newbies to the area. I feel like some of them have been around for months, I think, but having grown up there, I think she really realizes what a debaucherous city it is. And maybe she hasn't really. The Curiosity Cache sits on this little side road from I think it's the Imperial Avenue. I'll have to double check that, but it's not a party area. There's not a lot of stuff that goes on there, and so I feel like they're almost in this little bubble of safety as far as morality. Those kinds of things, and it's not a violent city, and it's not a city that like makes anyone do anything that they don't want to do, but there is a lot of drugs and sex and like crazy stuff that goes on. It's like Mardi Gras all the time.
Yep.
So as you guys leave your little safety bubble, what do you think? I mean, so like Pracha and the group already kind of dealt it just walking across the street at the wrong time and catching some people that are definitely be like outside of their comfort zone. How do you think she's going to react to this going out?
She has grown up in Shelzar, so I think it's going to be for her par for the course. But I think it'll be a lot of wrangling on behalf of her other party members potentially that don't know generally how things work in Shelzar. And having maybe a sit down and explanation with them at some point or other. I also think it kind of leaves room for them getting into a lot of trouble accidentally or inadvertently, just because they don't necessarily know all the customs, know what to expect and all that, and so may act in a different way.
Yeah. Do you think the other characters are going to need help?
Maybe. They might. They also. I mean, they can also handle themselves as they have proven.
Yeah.
So I think they'll probably be okay, but I also see instances where maybe they don't realize that something is usual for Shelzar.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how they react and what happens.
Totally. So you as a player, and then kind of you as Pracha, the Calastians. So the Calastian hegemony, for those who don't know, is a group of countries, small countries, and city-states and such that are off to the east of Shelzar, if I'm remembering my map correctly. They are very xenophobic. They're very controlling, but at the same time, members, like people who live there, don't often really go wanting for anything. No one's starving. As long as you're human. If you're not human, then you kind of get into this either gray area where you may be tolerated, like a half-orc may be tolerated because of their half side, like their human side, but elves not so welcome.
No. Slither in that. I know. I know halflings are tolerated.
It's true. They are.
Yeah.
So they've always kind of been pushing their boundaries, and King Varuk, I think, is
Mhm.
the leader over there, and he's actually just expanded his empire down to Tirana, which is another continent south of Gelspad. So they're always pushing things, and now the Calastians are showing up over in Shelzar, and they have an actual embassy that opened. You as a player, what do you think is going to happen with that? And like as far as you've already run into Calastians.
Yeah.
What do you expect to happen?
The answer is nothing good. Nothing good at all. The fact that there is now an embassy allowed in the city means that some sort of politics have happened that makes it more okay for them to be there, which is bad for anyone who's not human. Um, Realistically, especially in Shelzar, which
Yeah.
is a massive trading city. So you have people from all different cultures and backgrounds passing through this area, and now you have the classrooms there, and they're just going to make things really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it can go one of two ways, which is the Calastians will force themselves in, and it becomes more like Calastia, and maybe an army gets involved, or people get sick of their shit and the Calastians get pushed out.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
I did find it entertaining that no one picked human or any of the like kind of okay races for the Calastians.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how all of that goes because the entire group is kind of under a microscope now. And this is something else that we haven't really talked much about on the stream, and we'll bring it up again tomorrow because I think it's fun for people to know. We did this kind of home rule where if my dog barks, which I'm surprised she hasn't already,
Yeah.
then we're going to roll a die, and if it's even, something good happens, and if it's odd, something bad happens. And so the very first game, a group of Colossians went walking by, and as they were, Freed was almost to the shop. The dog barked, and Catie went and rolled an odd or even, whatever it was that we said was a bad number, and so they ended up with the Colossians noticed Freed a little too much, which has now gotten everybody involved. So before we wrap up, do you have any last minute thoughts? Anything you want to throw in?
No. Just that it's been a really fun game so far, and I'm enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying it as a DM.
I am.
I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
Because you're interviewing everybody else, but no one's interviewing you.
Oh, no.
Which is what I'm putting you on the spot. What has been your favorite moment as a DM so far?
Like since I started DMing?
Yes.
So I am one of those people who's been playing since I was like 8.
Yep.
Which was a while ago.
So one of your favorite moments. I will amend that question.
This is going to sound mean, I guess.
Okay.
My favorite moment that comes to mind whenever I think about being a DM and telling a story that essentially is, DMing isn't making your players, to me, it isn't making your players play the story you're telling. It's telling a story together.
Yeah.
And so kind of being the person who's like throwing out the things that players can choose. I was part of a 4.5 year campaign for this homebrew world that some of us that played in that then went on to, we started writing for it, and Water's Haven actually sprung from like 3rd edition and going to publish that. Still in the works, some 20 years later or something like that. But during that game, everyone got so connected to their characters, and near the end, there was this massive war going on with this. You ever seen Neverending Story?
Who hasn't?
Okay, I hope that's the answer everyone gives. Essentially, if the Nothing was an entity in this world and there were priests of the Nothing, during this battle, one of the main characters that had been there since the beginning was killed by one of these priests, and there was almost not a dry eye at the table. Like, all of the players were so devastated, and that just really brought out for me the fact that everyone was so connected to the story and to their characters. That was like, as terrible as it sounds, like, I killed your character, that's my favorite moment. It was definitely one of those moments that was like, this has affected, see? This has affected, right? Yay, roll a die. It's one of those moments that makes you realize that, these stories really affect you as a person. So that sounds terrible, but that was probably it. All right, so if you're watching live, I posted links to the Scarred Lands Player's Guide on DriveThruRPG. You can get it in PDF or print for either 5e or Pathfinder. And that's something we don't talk about very often, is that it is available on both systems. Curiosity Cache is played on 5e, but hey, if you're playing Pathfinder, good for you. So go get it. And with that, we'll wrap, and we're actually jumping on with everyone else right after this to see if our sound is working for tomorrow's game. If you have any questions, you can jump on and chat with us. And I think that's it. Oh, Catie, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Facebook at Catie Griffin Writer, or they can find me on my website, where I use a company to do freelance work through, which is www.mostimprobable.com.
Nice. And I just shared that link on the chat, and I'll put all of those links in the show notes if you were watching this later on, or if you're listening to it on podcast. So with that, everybody have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, for our live stream of the Curiosity Cache. Bye, everyone.
Bye.